All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining NAMI Walks Your Way Silicon Valley. Today is October 10th, the National Day of Hope. And today I have with me from the NAACP Youth Council of the Silicon Valley San Jose chapter, I have the Vice President, Terra Walls, and the Secretary, I'm just calling you DJ Rhychuu,
That's okay. Thank
Jevon
you.
Cuthbert, also known as DJ Rhychuu. Tara again is our vice president for the organization. She's also a wonderful poet, and her Coachella outfits are always sick. And DJ Rhychuu, aka Jevon Cuthbert, he likes to incorporate activism through his work, and these two have done amazing things from their amazing things for the community, both inside and outside of the organization. And we were very blessed to have them for this conversation today. How are you guys doing?
Oh, man. I'm doing okay. I think it's really important that we're having this conversation about mental health, especially in light of the decisions surrounding Breonna Taylor, because it has definitely been hard. I won't lie. It's definitely been difficult just as a woman, as a person of color, just trying to keep my mental health intact and move forward.
I see that. Yeah, it was definitely a curveball.
Um,
Yvonne, how you doing, my man?
Man, as I was telling you before we started a little bit, just tired. And um, yeah, just since we're getting on the topic of mental illness is very much overlooked and they kind of beat around the bush with it and just kind of, they don't really pay attention to what's really going on.
Right.
And that's why, even today, like people get to the point where it's just lives are lost just because they're going through something and they're not taking the time to actually understand that. So,
I appreciate that.
mhm.
And could you like things get swept under the rug? People aren't saying it. Can you elaborate on that?
People deal with stuff like depression or they have like, some type of, disability or illness that just, kind of differentiates from other people, and because it's being so underfunded and as the NAACP, we've looked at annual fundings and how the money's being divided between, and it's crazy how there's so much. You could be having more youth programs, you could be having more activities, especially for the youth, because the youth also go through some stuff as well. And with that being underfunded, it's like, all the kids are doing is just the consistency, repetitiveness, and it becomes a toll.
Not even just for the youth, for a lot of people, like you're saying, like 8 hours is taxing.
Mm-hmm.
J. Cole had a really good interview where he was like 8 hours a day, 40 or 5 days a week, even more than that. That's
Mm-hmm.
a third of your time. Another
Right.
8 hours of that has to go to sleeping. So during that
Yeah.
other third, you know what I mean? How much time do you really have?
Right.
And that's like getting what we were talking about, getting swept under the rug, things we don't talk about. Like we should be dedicating more of that time to ourselves, not
Mm-hmm.
just outside of work and then, having that self-care.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool. Tara, anything to add to that?
I think just going off of what you said, 8 hours needed to sleep, I think that's one of the first things that people start to sacrifice is their sleep and how much time they're taking to do things for themselves. And we're starting to get into this era, I think, where people are into self-care culture, where it's, candles and let me take a bath and do a face mask. But I think we need to start talking about how positive mental health comes from a lot more than that.
Right.
It comes from a lot of internal work, and I don't think that just candles and face masks will do everything for you, especially in times like right now where it's not enough.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just to kind of continue on that as well, it's like, you know, based on the times that we have, it's already bad enough that COVID is around and people can't really, even though there's some people that are in unemployment and there are some people that are still working, it's become a lot harder to enjoy the finer things in life.
Yeah.
Granted, a lot more people are able to kind of spend time with their families a little bit more. Um, but I do think that a lot of time is taken for granted, and all that time goes to just work and sleep. Given especially, you know, with the recent fires over here in California, that's also taken a bigger toll. And now people can't really like go outside because, oh, there's too much smoke. You can't be breathing that stuff. So it's like, what can't you breathe? You can't breathe the air because of COVID. And now you can't breathe the air because of the fires. Like, so like, what can we really do, you know? So we've definitely, during these past years before COVID, I feel like, especially for me, we've been taking a lot of time for granted.
I feel that. Okay, let's get into these questions that
Yeah.
went in that like straight up.
Like really, we just like, we already answered like a few of them. I feel like
all right. Okay. So as we get into more race-based things, we're just going to intertwine this into this mental health question. What is mental health to you? Any experiences you want to share?
I feel like on a surface level, you could say mental health is obviously, I mean, just to simply put it, I guess just being happy. But I mean, there's obviously more to it. I think personally for me, mental health, you know, I struggled with depression and I've struggled with anxiety. And I think for me to have decent mental health, I think is to get to a place where I can function despite those things. I don't let them define me. I don't let them interrupt me from being who I want to be. And I guess to me, that's how I would define mental health. Hard question though.
It is. Terra, you mentioned something about functioning and the ability to function and not function in regards to mental health. Can you elaborate on that? Like, what is what is something you do that helps you to function in those situations?
Okay, this might not be something I do, but I guess something that has really helped me. It's not going to be revolutionary at all. I started doing therapy. Been around forever, and quarantine started, and I was like, you know what? I just cannot do this on my own anymore. So I got a therapist, and that alone, I think we should really, you know, take away the stigmas that surround therapy and that surround seeking help with your mental health, because it's not something that you can really always do on your own. And I think that's how people do talk about depression, like it's a hole that you have to crawl out of on your own. But I don't think that that is always the case, at least not for me. I think having a therapist and learning how to meditate and bring myself back to a place where I can focus on, you know, what's real and what's important and not things that my mind is trying to tell me to focus on is really what helps me get through the days lately.
That's great, and congratulations. That's a big step.
Thank you. Shout out to my therapist.
Sure. Yeah. Are you digging it at San Jose State? Are you getting yours at San Jose State? If you don't mind.
No, I like went out of network, out of insurance and everything. It's expensive. I think that's the other thing we need to talk about. How having positive mental health should not make you go broke, because my lash appointments are like the same price as my therapist, and it should not. That's crazy. It's craziness.
Yeah, dude, San Jose State's, I got mine for free while I was there. That was lit.
For me, mental health is about feeling and energy. I because I also go through depression as well, and I've been through a lot, and it really matters on how you feel, with not just emotion, but just with everything that surrounds you. And that also ties into energy, because if you're draining, that affects your mental. It affects how you think, and having such a conscience that when you think of one thing and your conscience says the other, then it's like, well, what do I do? Like, you know, and you're just constantly having these battles within yourself, and it's a lot of self issue, as well as experiences that you deal with in your daily life, that whether it is generalized within yourself or generalized with other people, or events that happen, or just something that you know, traumatizing, whether it was natural or unnatural, it affects everything that surrounds you. So that's my thing on mental health.
Well put. Yeah, no, I like that energy.
Yeah, definitely energy plays a huge part.
Going on to the next one, let's get some definitions out of the way. What is BIPOC and what is non-BIPOC?
We beautiful, indestructible, we have too many personalities, and we colored. That's BIPOC to me. I'm just, hey, no. Before we started this, I was like, BIPOC, how can I change that? But you know, Black, Indigenous, people of color, you know, non-BIPOC. If you ain't colored, I'm sorry. Colored, that's it.
That's it.
Well said. I think it's I think we started using that term, I think, heavily in 2020, just to account for the erasure of Indigenous people when you say people of color, I guess, and for Black people who have darker skin.
Talking about mental health, we covered that. And talking about the BIPOC and non-BIPOC community, why is it so significant, especially in this time, to be focused on mental health, specifically in the BIPOC and non-BIPOC community?
I think, as Tara said earlier, with the death of Breonna Taylor and just how everything's kind of happening between BIPOC with police brutality, and like I said, with COVID and the fires, and again with how I said with energy, everything surrounding us has always taken a toll, and just for years of experience between every generation between BIPOC, it's definitely taking a really hard toll on us. And it's putting a lot of people in positions that they can't handle. Sometimes I feel, even for me, I don't really, because I feel like anything that I do at this point could put me in danger. And I feel like that's how a lot of people in the BIPOC community feel, is that anything I do right now is going to put me in danger. And it's at a worse level than it was before, you know, just because everything just added up. So I hope I explained that good to the most entirety that I don't know what else to say.
Saying that, knowing all this is going on, how can mental health play a bigger role in this? What difference can it make?
I think it is impossible to be as involved as you possibly could be, or maybe as much as you want to be, if you're not taking care of yourself first. It's so easy to be easily overwhelmed. I mean, you wake up, you check your phone, and it's bad news every single day for like the last 6 months. I think that like I said, it starts with yourself. And at least for me, it was impossible for me to get involved with the NAACP, to get involved with protests and, you know, any kinds of, you know, political activism if I wasn't taking care of myself. And I think, you know, just to touch on what was just said, minorities, you know, we do not talk about mental health as much as we should. We don't talk about it in, you know, generational trauma. We don't talk about those kinds of things. And racism is something that is not new to any of us. It's something we've experienced ever since we've been alive, to know that we aren't white and we don't have privilege that comes with being white, you know. So all of that trauma, you start to internalize it. And, you know, I think it's at a boiling point now, because the conversation about race is not one that can be ignored. You can't push it anywhere. You can't put it anywhere. It's in front of your face, whether you want it to be or not. And that comes with kind of a debilitating feeling. Like, I don't know if I can handle this. I don't know if I can deal with this, you know. And mental health, I think part of that is coming to terms with how it makes you feel, how you're positioned in this world, and how, you know, you're treated, how it makes you feel. So I guess just to answer, sorry, that was like a super long answer. But I guess just to answer the question, you have to deal with yourself and how you feel, and have those conversations in your home if you ever want to be able to have them outside of your house, if you want to contribute to the bottom line conversation, because otherwise it's just going to be suffocating. It's just going to be too much.
Right. No, I like that. And you touched up on a lot of good points, and I'm going to shoot this next question to you. You were talking about going on your phone, you see everything bad energy. As to
Yeah.
put it into Jevon's words, bad energy. You're trying to get involved as much as you can. Can we talk about fatigue for a little bit? When you're trying to do as much as you can, and you're like, I gotta keep going, I gotta keep going. My friends, my brothers, my sisters are outside fighting. I can't take a break. But that
Yes.
is double-edged in and of itself because we're not. And can we talk about fatigue for a little bit?
Yes, I think we definitely need to talk about burnout and how that happens, how it's possible. The NAACP president and I, Kyle, well, for our chapter, Kyle and I, we put on a protest in 2016 when Alton Sterling was murdered. And we were really heavily involved with the movement then, you know, and eventually it just started to die off because we were high school seniors graduating and it just was exhausting. It's tiring trying to focus on your future, you know, and think positively about that and the moves that you're making and stepping away from that and seeing how much is possible for someone who is a person of color, for a woman, you know, for immigrants, children of immigrants. And it can just be so overwhelming. So I think some of my own personal advice that I've tried to implement in my life is I try not to check my phone when I first wake up for at least 30 minutes because I'm not trying to get burnt out as soon as I open my eyes, you know. At night, I try not to look at it the last 30 minutes before I go to bed. I think you need to really have days where you just kind of check out, as horrible as that sounds, where
Mhm.
you just do things that make you feel good, because it's so easy to get lost in everything that does the opposite. It's so easy to be burnt out, to lose yourself in the movement. But like I said before, you can only do so much if you're not feeling your best. You need to make sure you're getting sleep, make sure you're taking care of yourself. The movement will be there. It is always going to be there. It has been there for 100 years. It's not going to go anywhere, so it doesn't hurt anyone for you to take care of yourself for a moment.
That's great. I like that. What you're doing is setting a boundary, and that's good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not always going to be 100%, and that's okay. And no, I really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
To kind of also just slightly continue on it, but not too much. I think that should also, fatigue should be generalized because, um, even just being in the work field, just the whole 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, that also can be very fatiguing. And at some degree, I feel like, we definitely at some point need a break. And then, they're only like, they give you days off, and it's like sometimes you can get them and sometimes you can't. You gotta like hope and pray, like, am I actually gonna get this week off? Can I
Right.
actually enjoy my time? I think um time needs to be well spent.
All right. So, what challenges, such as stigma, do people in communities of color face when learning about mental health or seeking professional help? We've touched up on this a little bit. I just want to hit the nail on the head and just go for that topic.
I think actually something I wanted to bring up that I've seen recently, opposed to your question, I definitely think there's a stigma, and I think it's with older generations, and certainly our generation. I guess you would say millennials, because we're in that really weird in
Yeah,
between.
97.
But as I've downloaded TikTok and whatnot, I see that Gen Z is kind of starting those conversations about mental health, depression, trauma. But I think it's a really weird place because we've gone so long without talking about it that we are almost desensitizing ourselves. At least I'm afraid of younger generations doing that, where it is almost hilarious to have trauma, hilarious to have depression. You know, we want to make content out of that. And I think that's the point where we need to talk about how it is okay to get help, you know, how it's not a defining character trait to be depressed or to have anxiety. You know, it's not quirky or fun. A lot of people really do struggle with those things. And I think we need to find a balance between talking about it but not making it an entire personality trait, you know,
Mhm.
seeking help and getting rid of the stigma at the same time.
Mhm.
That's real. That's real. And You said TikTok.
Yeah.
Out of all
So,
things, TikTok
And
had to be the
funny.
one.
They're
yeah,
funny.
we all thought about a
They
certain
always have
TikTok.
their ways of making things known, which is I guess is in a sense good, but also yeah, like how you're saying that's
So we're talking about it's not being talked about. If it is being talked about, it may not be in the most responsible way.
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
I've definitely heard situations where um people in my generation, you know, for us being as millennials, we've talked about depression and we've tried to vocalize it to our parents. And, you know, I've heard stories where they were just like, oh, depression's not real. You're not supposed
Mm,
to feel that way. It doesn't exist. Like, if you're feeling this way, you're probably loony. Do I have to take you to the, you know,
Yeah.
like, do I gotta
yeah.
take you to the loony bin, you know? Like, so it's, I guess, yeah, it's just the generations before us didn't really take that into consideration.
Yeah.
And the ones now, like how Tara was saying, they're talking about it, just not in the right direction. It's just being stated. And that's the issue. It's just the statement. There's no solution.
Yeah. And I think that we don't need to put that responsibility on Gen Z
Right.
because, naturally if they look up at our generation and older generations, it's like, okay, we've done our part. We identified what we have. What do
Mm-hmm.
we do about it? And there's not really an example to follow there because we don't talk about it. And I think to answer your question, so much of, at least for minorities and immigrants, children of immigrants, so much of our existence and our parents' existences have been contingent on the idea of survival. So
Mhm.
you don't have time to worry about depression, anxiety. Those things are not a conversation because it's not about that. It's just about staying alive. It's about assimilating, holding on to as much of your culture as you can, but making sure that you can make a name for yourself, for your family, so we don't get to talk about those things. Our parents didn't get to talk about those things because where's the room for that?
Right.
We don't have space for that. And I think, you know, especially because of the pandemic, so many people, so many older people too, not having work and not having this structure of 9 to 5, it gives you time to think about those things. You can think about, okay, like, whoa, hey, I might be struggling with this, I might be struggling with that. But I just think that's where it comes from, at least for older people and for minorities. It's just not something you had the luxury to even think about.
For sure. And no, I like that. But it's really become a really big thing, and people are softening up too. I remember one time I came up to my dad. I was like, I was breaking down and I was telling telling him all these feelings and stuff, and then he was just like light bulb. He was like, oh, I might have that too. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay. And I was like, cool. I was like, he opened up. That's as much as I'll get out of him.
Right.
But like, being the son of immigrants and everything, like we grew up with a social circle, or
Yeah.
maybe like we had a better, like our schools here, we grew up in the culture. Whereas if you're immigrating, you're in a whole new place with even less people to talk to, even less people
Mhm.
speaking your language, everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And um, what you're saying is totally true, where they just had to just pull up by the bootstraps or whatever. It's
Yeah.
definitely taken a toll, and it brings up a conversation that we really should be having.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So this is going to be my last question of the day. So I'm saying that people look at NAACP and think it's one thing for Black people, when since its birth, since it started, it's been for the advancement of all colored people. And now we're
Hmm.
having all these issues this year. And what are things we can do to support each other's community, not like Black to Hispanic
Hmm.
and to white and to Asian and all this and that, especially in mental health?
I think the first thing, as simple as it sounds, is listen. We need to listen more to the struggles of each community. And I think when people look at the NAACP, of course, they're going to see it through one lens. And I think that's a given when people don't really do their research. But if you look at the NAACP's history and the history of involvement with other struggles, I think that they are all really intertwined. Even when you get on Twitter, you see people arguing in different communities over things that, you know, I won't say are silly, but it's minuscule compared to what we're really battling. So, and you get a glimpse of that when you go to a protest, or when you see all these different people from different walks of life, different gender, you know, all of these different people just coming together and, you know, I guess being passionate about change. You know, I think that's really what we have to look at, is the end goal, and stop all of the fighting in our own ethnic groups.
We have to stop looking at the blind side. You know how they always say the grass is greener on the other side. There's definitely a bigger picture, and people need to stop seeing things just in black and white. They need to open their eyes and stay woke. You feel me? I was actually having a discussion with my sister and my friend's mom, and we were just all sitting at the table, and we were talking about my sister's child, because he's one. My sister being kind of a single mother and, you know, trying to do the best she can. My friend's mom was saying, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. And the more we realize that we all need to stick together and take care of each other, as well as taking care of ourselves, we'll better ourselves to know, like, this is how it is, you know? So that's just touching, just, you know, touching the surface. Then,
Right. Yeah.
2 feet. Just
yeah, you
2
could
feet.
dig a little deeper if you want. I'm using my work Zoom. So
I know, man. I didn't know how to continue on from that. It takes a village to raise a child, you know.
Right.
It's and especially with the saying Isang Baksak. You know, one down, one fall. You know, if someone falls, everybody falls. We all are sticking together, you know, with that whole great boycott movement. I mean, it wasn't just the Filipinos. It was also, you know, the Hispanics and Latinos. They were all working together, even with the language barrier, and they made it work. So, you know, as much as there may be complications, just as long as we find ways to just be there for each other and help raise each other, we can definitely, you know, because it's all about, you know, I feel like I'm using a lot of references right now, because especially we're gonna go here. Y'all remember Bug's Life, right?
Oh, let's go.
Yes.
Oh, let's go.
You got, look, if it just takes one person to say something and everyone follows, if you have a whole group of people, because you can't fight, you have everybody against you, what are you gonna do?
That's true.
So I'm sorry for using a lot of references, but, you know, I kind of had to go there.
I was waiting for your laugh, right? But I could also, like, your dimple. I was just like, and then when you
oh wait, other side. Yes, sir.
For sure. Well, thank you guys for spending this time. These are all the questions I have. Is there anything you want to add just while we got this flow going? Mental health in the people of color communities, the need for mental health, anything that you think that we could have touched up on?
Okay. I feel like we really touched on some of the most pressing things, at least on my mind. So
awesome.
I think one thing I would definitely say, join workshops.
Oh yeah.
Workshops are great. You can definitely find people inside and outside of your community. And you can understand a lot more that way. Just, you know, especially when they have mental health workshops as well.
Thank you guys for coming.
Yes.
Again, this is NAMI Walks Your Way, Silicon Valley. I am so happy to have had this conversation of such a relevant topic in today, and should always be a relevant topic, and reach other communities of color, especially in this time. Mental health isn't for any one person from a certain walk of life. It's for everyone. We all have some problem, something going on in their minds. And thank you for tuning in back home. Again, NAMI Walks Your Way. If you want to donate, text NAMI Walk. Again, NAMI Walk to 44321. And I'm joined today by Jevon Cuthbert, Terra Walls, the Secretary and Vice President of the NAACP Milpitas San Jose, or Silicon Valley San Jose Youth Chapter. And I'm very blessed to have these guys as my friends. And we will see you again soon. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.